On April 27, 1913, the body of 13-year-old Mary Phagan was discovered in the basement of the National Pencil Company in Atlanta, Georgia. Her brutal murder set in motion one of the most controversial and racially charged trials in American history, the case of Leo Max Frank, a Jewish factory superintendent who would be arrested, tried, and ultimately lynched in a shocking miscarriage of justice. The case not only exposed deep societal divisions but also had lasting consequences that echoed for generations. Mary Phagan was a child laborer who worked part-time at the National Pencil Company. On April 26, 1913, she went to the factory to collect her wages from Leo Frank. Her body was found the next morning, strangled with a cord, her dress torn, and signs of a violent struggle evident. A mysterious note, apparently written by the killer, was found nearby, blaming the crime on a black night watchman named Newt Lee. The gruesome nature of the murder, coupled with the victim's youth and innocence, sent Atlanta into a frenzy. The press sensationalized every detail, feeding a growing hunger for justice and for someone to blame. Initially, suspicion fell on Newt Lee, but soon the spotlight shifted to Leo Frank, the last known person to see Mary alive. Frank was a Cornell-educated Northerner, a manager at the pencil factory, and a prominent member of Atlanta's small Jewish community. In the eyes of many Southerners at the time, he was an outsider, wealthy, urban, educated, and Jewish, and that made him an easy target in a society steeped in classism, xenophobia, and antisemitism. Frank was arrested on May 1, 1913, and charged with Mary Phagan's murder. Frank's trial began in July 1913 and quickly devolved into a spectacle. Thousands of spectators gathered daily, and emotions ran high both inside and outside the courtroom. The prosecution's star witness was Jim Conley, a black janitor at the factory, who claimed that Frank had asked him to help cover up the murder. Conley's testimony was inconsistent and riddled with contradictions, but it was enough to turn the tide. The prosecution painted Frank as a sexual predator who had made advances toward Mary. They claimed that when she resisted, he murdered her. No physical evidence linked Frank to the crime, and much of the case was built on innuendo and bias. The press fanned the flames of antisemitism, portraying Frank as morally corrupt, and the public, already suspicious of Jews, was eager for a conviction. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Leo Frank was found guilty on August 25, 1913, and sentenced to death by hanging. Frank's legal team launched a series of appeals, citing trial irregularities, false testimony, and intense public pressure that compromised the fairness of the proceedings. National organizations, including the American Jewish Committee and prominent figures like Louis Brandeis and Rabbi Stephen S. Wise, rallied to his defense. Newspapers in the North began to question the fairness of the trial. They pointed to Jim Conley's criminal history and the contradictions in his statements. Even Georgia's governor, John M. Sladen, grew concerned. After an exhaustive review of the case, Sladen concluded that Frank had not received a fair trial and commuted his sentence from death to life imprisonment in June 1915. The decision was courageous, but dangerous. Governor Sladen's commutation infuriated the public. Mobs gathered outside his home, and he received death threats. He and his wife fled the state under armed guard. But the anger didn't subside, it redirected itself toward Leo Frank. On the night of August 16, 1915, a mob calling itself the Knights of Mary Phagan broke into the Milledgeville State Prison. They kidnapped Frank, drove him over 100 miles to Marietta, Mary's hometown, and lynched him from an oak tree at daybreak. Pictures of the lynching were turned into postcards, grim souvenirs of vigilante justice. No one was ever convicted for Frank's lynching, despite the mob being composed of local elites, judges, lawyers, and prominent citizens.